Amy. She's going to make an announcement about recording.
This meeting is being recorded.
Thanks, Amy. Great. Welcome, everybody. You are in the CAELI District Innovation Hub webinar series. Today's topic is Green Giants, Gardens, Schoolyards, Forests, and the champions who support them. Our agenda today, we'll have a little bit of welcome and connections right here at the beginning. Then we'll hear from Val Verde Unified School District and their approach to kind of a district-led implementation of district-wide school gardens. Next, we'll hear from a community organization, the HEAL Project, and their approach to partnering with Cabrillo Unified School District to also bring a district-wide implementation of gardens. After that, we'll have some time for question and answer. In-depth discussions will likely happen after a formal close. We'll try to close formally around 5 o'clock, but we do have a half-hour extra of opportunity for people to stick around, share stories, ask the presenters some in-depth questions, and to join into small breakout rooms. We do acknowledge that we have a lot of expertise on this call. In addition to our featured presenters, we know that many of you bring garden expertise, garden resources, and years of experience. So whether you're new at this journey or bringing a lot to the table, we hope you're active in the chat, asking questions and sharing ideas and resources as we go. So just for getting the welcome going, I'm Nate Ivey. I'm one of the co-chairs of the CAELI District Innovation Hub. I'm an instructional coach in Fremont Unified School District, and I will be playing the role of MC today. We've got a number of other CAELI folks on the call, including Tim Baird, who's my co-chair in the District Innovation Hub, Amy Frame from 10 Strands, who's going to be doing a lot of the Wizard of Oz stuff behind the scenes, and a number of other CAELI affiliated folks. What we'd like to do, Amy's going to drop in the chat a link to a Padlet. And this Padlet is a place where you can, leave like your business card. There's going to be folks on this call. We're going to have some conversation time, opportunities to chat, and you might want to follow up or connect with people who you're meeting from around the state. The best way to do that is to put yourself on the map by clicking this pink plus button in the lower right-hand corner of the Padlet that you will find in the chat. And then taking a minute to populate one of these little cards, placing a pin on the map, and then you can edit that pin to say something about yourself, share your email, put your name and title. If you have a link to a garden program or any other work that you do that you think would be of interest to environmental educators around the state or on this call, please go ahead and add that to the Padlet as well. So I'm going to give you a minute to push that pink plus button and populate a pin on the map. It's always fun to see the different corners of the state pop up on the Padlet. If you're just joining, I saw a couple people just come in from the waiting room. We're asking you to click on that link in the chat, open up the Padlet, click that pink plus button in the lower right-hand corner, and put yourself on the map. Tell us about yourself, about your program, where you're joining us from, and maybe a little bit of contact information so you and others on the call can follow up with each other and we can build this statewide network. Okay, so I imagine you'll probably still want to be thinking about that, but as you're working on that, I'm gonna kind of move us into the next piece, which goes hand in hand with kind of adding yourself to the map. Amy's going to put us into breakout rooms, about 4 people per room. We'll have about 5 minutes in a breakout room for just a really quick round of introductions. Your name, your organization, and your role. Where from the state are you joining? And just your thoughts. Why do gardens belong in schools? Probably not your entire thesis about that question, but your first answer, your top of mind, kind of most important thing, or adding something that hadn't been mentioned in your group before. While you're doing that, again, it can be useful to have the Padlet open. So Amy's got the Breakout rooms popping up on the screen. Please join your breakout room, and we'll see you back in the main room in about 5 minutes. All right, Amy, you'll move us back into the rooms. Great.
Amy, can you send me again? Like, oh, wait, sorry. I see it. Chat box is covering. There.
Somehow my invite disappeared on from the breakout room.
Okay.
I don't know what
Yes.
happened to it.
It's a little weird. It's kind of like you don't exist. Oh, there you are. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, now I'm finding it too.
You're finding it? Okay, good. See you in 5 minutes. Are you able to get in?
All right, hey, welcome back. Good to see you all. I know we enjoyed our moment of connection in the room I was in. I'm gonna get these slides back up. Google or Zoom has the new feature when you start sharing your screen, it turns off your mic unless you change a setting on my computer. So I'm learning my way around that. All right, so let's move on. Amy, you're recording again? Yep, got it going. So just a little bit about the group that's sponsoring this today. So CAELI is the California Environmental Literacy Initiative, and it's a collective impact organization of wide range of environmental educators, school district folks, thought leaders, trying to figure out how to bring environmental literacy to all of California's students. CAELI is organized around a number of innovation hubs, groups of like-minded people or job-alike folks who are trying to advance this in their own domain. So there's a community-based partner hub. A lot of you might be already a community-based partner to a district. There's a county office hub trying to think about how county offices can provide support for this. Tim and I are members of the District Innovation Hub, and this webinar is sponsored by the District Innovation Hub. I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a minute. We also have hubs on equity, green career education, policy and advocacy, and professional learning. And we think that by innovating in all of these areas, we can accelerate and advance opportunities for all students to access high quality environmental education. So the District Innovation Hub, we have a number of goals which are met by this webinar opportunity. We want to build a community of district practitioners and partners. So our hope is that by bringing us all together through webinars like this, we can meet, we can build this community across the state. We're stronger together, we can share resources. We're trying to create, curate, and share environmental literacy resources, which you'll see in today's presentations. And then build capacity for planning. One of our big goals is to cultivate, support, and showcase leading edge exemplars, and we're really happy with the two groups that we have today to share their work. So that's a little bit about us, but let's move on to get into the meat of this. One thing that we think is key both in the District Innovation Hub and in CAELI is to think about the whole system. There's a number of whole system approaches for environmental education in California, whether it's the Green Ribbon Schools program with the 3 pillars, the 4 C's framework that came out of San Mateo County Office of Education, or Tim's organization and their framework for green schools. So we try to keep that in mind as we approach this, and we're thinking about how do we do this in a whole district system today. Amy's going to share in the chat a Jamboard, which is a good place to interact and record notes. And there's 2 things on the Jamboard today. One is a place for you to record questions for our presenters for Valverde or for the HEAL project. You can also throw those questions in the chat. That's fine as well. But the second panel of the Jamboard is a place for you to share resources, links to your organizations. We know we have a lot of garden professionals, school garden experts on this today. So you might be in a position to share a really important resource or just put a link to the work you are doing. So the second page of the Jamboard is a space to share resources. Okay, so today's big question is that lots of schools have school gardens, but how can a district ensure that every school has a garden? And to kick us off on that question, we're going to turn it over to Doug Henderson, Director of STEAM Projects in Val Verde Unified School District, to talk about his district's path to ensuring that every school has a garden. Doug, take it away.
Sure. All right. Again, Doug, I'm in charge of STEAM and career pathways for the district. And I guess kind of the journey for a real quick context on why I spend so much time and effort on putting it out of the garden is understanding that I have career pathways under my umbrella, but I also have science under my umbrella. So when you start talking about K-12 science, how do we get science instruction to be occurring? How do I tie that into career pathways? How do kids actually get into the FFA and the things that all the elements they're going to do? Then it was a matter of starting to put some things together and map them all together into one big K-12 pathway. So luckily, we had started some of this work ahead of time, and then actually the pandemic helped us come up with some new things, because then all of a sudden now you had ESSER funds to put towards outdoor learning spaces and lots of other things that came, to which I said, oh, perfect. Now let's get all this nailed down. So, so what I'm gonna kind of show you is today is a little bit about the why and how I created. So just so you know, every one of my schools, so I have 22 schools. So if you click one more slide for me, Nate. So I have 22 schools, K-12. And so we made sure to include every single school in all of our stuff. So a little bit about who Val Verde is. 19,300. I think we gained a few in the last couple of months. I think we're 19.5 now. Riverside County. So if you know where March Air Force Base, that's in my district. That's our demographics. So a huge, I know you can't see the infographic there. Well, I always make jokes that we call ourselves the infographic district because we have an infographic for literally everything. So here's the one that has all of our populations and all the stuff that we have. So you can see there 85% low socioeconomic. So part of the mission of what I'm always trying to do is to make sure that all the kids that I have in this district have any opportunity that anybody else has anywhere in the state. So next slide. One of the things that we spent a lot of time coming up with from the district level is what we call portrait of a graduate. Some of you guys have done some of this work with Ed Leader. What is a portrait of a graduate? So we're just saying these are the things that we want every kid to graduate with. So a couple of things that I'm just going to point out. I'm not in here to sell anything. It's the communication, collaboration, and critical thinking of things that the garden ties to a lot, because when plants are dying and you have to solve problems at all times, this is one of the things you need to do. So being in charge of all the STEM initiatives for the district, one of the things I've done is create platforms for kids to be solving problems everywhere. That includes STEAM labs, that includes gardens, that includes robotics teams, that includes lots of things, but everything is about kids need to be able to solve problems in context. So gardens to me is an extension of the STEAM lab out in the outdoor learning space that we can then put together. So I also created you can hit it like 3 more times. So I have a few, there we go. Created and then one more time. One more. There we go. So when it came to the portrait of a graduate, it came time for me to come up with a way to kind of put everything together and what would a K-12 continuum look like. So this is kind of like the guiding document I use, making sure that kids are using engineering design, that they are solving problems. In K2, they're pretty simple problems. They're in a classroom. They got to get out bigger and work your way all the way up into the STEAM and career and entrepreneurship up in the high school. So this is kind of like my guiding document. The tools get more complicated, the problems get more complicated, but the goal is to get kids solving more things. Okay, next slide. Let me tell you a little about the steps that we did and kind of the journey and all this kind of stuff. So next one. the first issue that we had was we had a lot of old gardens. So there's been a lot of schools in the district that had been doing garden projects. And I want to say not everybody, but it was some were doing garden projects. But it was not equitable across the district. So some principals had spent more money, others had spent zero money. And so we didn't really have programs that compared to each other, which I didn't think was that was an equity issue to me. So first thing we started doing was actually the city of Paris. Well, so even before step one, step zero, city of Paris decided they wanted to become one of the healthiest places in the United States, and they wanted that award. So they started bringing us in to have conversations about gardens and how do we increase the gardens and parks and bike trails and all those kinds of things. So we kind of started falling along lines with what they were asking and said, you know what, let's step it up. Let's make sure our kids have some education on gardens, and what are we going to do? So they authored, and we kind of helped them with this on a U.S. Department of Agriculture grant to create a system of how to create a program. So we kind of piloted that system of what you need in order to create a farm to school program. So at this point, we decided we were going to grow the food that we were going to serve in the cafeteria. So once we kind of partnered with them and had that first creation of the grant, then I came back to these key partners. Okay, so went to my food services director and said, hey, if we grow the food, will you buy it at market price? He said, absolutely 100%. This is amazing. I'm all in. Went to the facilities director and said, are you going to be able to allow me to build spaces? Are you going to reimagine spaces, rip stuff out, move stuff, do all that kind of stuff, move water lines? We had gardens that were created where the water line was the same one as the grass next to it. So it was tied into the irrigation system. So it was getting the same amount of water as the lawn. So we were having all kinds of issues. So they said, yes. Fiscal director, I said, hey, listen, with this ESSER fund, suddenly now we're going to let's get some outdoor learning happening. Let's get kids outside, their hands in the dirt, especially coming out of the COVID. Hey, can I get some of that and some of the LCAP funds? They said, sure. And then getting maintenance and operations on it. So being able to get them in is a huge one, because not all maintenance, not all M&O crews want to help with this, but they were all in and they agreed to hook up the square foot gardening systems and all that stuff. So once I had everybody on board, go ahead, next slide. Then it was make sure let's talk to the schools. Let's do a little needs analysis. We need to know what you have and what you don't have. How much of a gut is this of your entire garden, and how much of it is just, hey, you just needed some timers and we could go. So we found a couple gardens that were just needed to be modernized a little bit, and then we found a whole bunch more that needed to be stripped to the ground. We even had one of them that we found that the orchard kept dying. So by the time we figured out that there was 18 inches of sand because they had put the garden on top of the old swing set area. And so we were having issues with irrigation and all kinds of stuff there. So then we literally got tractors and dump trucks and trucked all the sand out, and then we bought more dirt and trucked more dirt back in so we could actually have a real garden instead of all the sand underneath. So some gardens turned into be way more expensive than we thought. The other part was the important part with the meet with the garden coordinators. So whenever you build a system around one person and that one person leaves, you're in trouble. So it was about, hey, listen, I'm willing to put in a new garden here, but I need to know who your team is, not who your one garden person is, but who your team is. And then I also worked with the union. In fact, I don't even have it on here, to get a garden coordinator stipend. So I needed a person to be in charge. So let's go get that stipend approved through negotiations so that they are getting paid for the time that they spend in the garden. Then step 3 was then, go back one, there we go, was all the other people I need involved. And you're going to hear from the Heal Project today. Community partners are huge in this. So there is zero chance I could have pulled off any of this without my UC Master Gardeners. They're on my campuses all the time, coming, and they help the teachers. They help my science TOSAs figure all this kind of stuff. So how do we get lessons tied to science standards that are then showing up in the classrooms? And I know, I don't know if Juanita's on today, but I know she's presented one of the earlier ones. We had a different strategy. I didn't talk about environmental literacy standards in mind until I had the vehicle in which to get it out there. And I felt like the gardens was the vehicle I needed. So when we rolled out our next generation science standards, I didn't mention those environmental standards that come along with it, because I felt like the teachers would kind of view this as one more thing on their plate. So I said, okay, let's just focus on the NGSS. We start from there. And then once we get all this infrastructure in place, now we start saying, hey, remember, and we start folding some of these things in. So we're getting lots of good traction right now with teachers and talking about environmental because we have them out in the garden. We're getting them hydroponic towers for their classrooms and they're growing stuff. So waste management, the economic team to get connected me to businesses, healthcare providers all helped with some of this. The USDA Farm to School grant, we then applied for our own USDA Farm to School implementation grant. And in this grant, it was $100,000. It wasn't a big grant, but that was the max they could give you. We took that and then that helped us pay for some of the stuff that we were doing. So we basically gutted everything down, rebuilt it with redwood because redwood's prettier, and then put square foot gardening and timers and trees and outdoor spaces and all kinds of stuff. The other big one I'll tell you is SB 1000. If you don't know what that is, it's a environmental justice bill that went through. So basically in areas that are deemed as low socioeconomic populations, there has to be something when someone is applying for a building permit, they have to have something in their plan on how they're going to mitigate the air quality from all the trucks and all these warehouses coming through. How are you going to do something about it? So our county, Riverside County, has been good at pushing people my way and say, hey, let me know when they donate their money because I'm not signing off on their building permit until they do. And so we've picked up quite a few hundreds of thousands of dollars, some companies that want to build a warehouse that they're now helping us plant trees and redo our gardens and all that kind of stuff. So try to hopefully do something with the air quality. And then corporations. So I'll just tell you my newest one is last week I met with Procter & Gamble. They run one of these warehouses. They said they wanted to give to the environment. So they gave me a $120,000 donation to keep renovating gardens so that we keep modernizing them also. That's a huge plus because your fiscal director is only going to give you so much LCAP money in order to do all this. So being able to connect all those with all those industry partners and these neighbors that are around us, they all want to help. You just got to go and knock on the door a little bit and do it. And then the fourth step is the most important step, actually building them, right? So you got to actually get out there and build it, modernize them. So we focused on square foot gardening because you have ability to teach math in square foot gardening without actually mentioning the word radius or circumference or any of those square foots or any of those kinds of words, because they just have to learn how to plant them and have all their distances. So it's a way to kind of play with it, but without focused on terminology. Automatic timers, because we found a lot of things died over Christmas break, or they've died over spring break, or whatever, when no one was there to water them. That garden coordinator stipend I mentioned, and then building these outdoor learning classrooms. And then you got to plant. Let's get some more stuff growing. So the other most important thing is keeping teachers in the loop and supporting them along the way. So we'll kind of go through some pictures real quick of some of the gardens that I put in. A couple pictures of kids in the gardens right there. So this is one of the first ones we did at Bethune. In fact, the tables aren't even in the picture. And this one we didn't, it wasn't even redwood yet. This is one of our earlier ones that we did, but that's the outdoor learning space, has a whiteboard on it now. But next one. This is our kindergarten. See what we did there. See, that's clever. The kindergarten, they actually have two gardens on this campus because they wanted one just for their kinder kids. So the kindergarten class has their own garden. That's what this one is. And there's another one on the other side of campus. Manual Real, so you can see there's a nice big there's tables and stuff under there now. By the way, I took the pictures when I turned it over because now there's lots of things growing in there, but this is the pictures when it first happened. So you can see redwood, we put redwood fence around it. Mead Valley, this is the one with that orchard you see in the right picture. That's the one we found all the sand. So that one we had to truckloads of sand out of there and then backfill it. May Ranch. May Ranch is where Kelly, one of our third grade teachers, she's a master gardener, and she's the one that keeps me going to the gardens because she's sending me about an email per day of the next project that, hey, here's what we're gonna do next, here's what we're gonna do next. So she keeps this garden initiative moving. And by the way, you see the keyhole gardens there, that bottom left. So we have the little keyholes. So the kids, those are too big for the kids to reach across. So I have them step into the middle. And then some of our schools that have high sped populations, we make sure they are 36 inches wide so the wheelchairs can go into the middle. And then the kids can wheel their wheelchair in there and do it. Middle school. So we gutted the middle school one also, redid it. This is our high school, so just pointing out that we have the K-12. So you can see the far right, a square foot garden is a shade structure. By the way, use the ESSER funds to pay for all the shade structures. And then there's the outdoor kitchen there. It's got cooktop and sinks and everything so that we can do a chef in the garden thing. You see the greenhouse in the kind of the top right of that picture. And then at the bottom, or you see the tanks for the aquaponics or the aquaculture, and then you see all the tanks for the hydroponics there. But we have them all tied with pipes in the ground, so it's a full hydroponic system. That we are our aquaponic systems. We have the fish feeding the plants and all that kind of stuff. That's a 4,000 square foot greenhouse there. And then at the bottom there, we have goats. So just we threw in the mix. We have goats and sheep also next to it. So go to the next one. So that's you see we have a partner with Dofo Winery. So if you go one more slot, you'll see the wine. So we actually have our own wine. It's called Yodi 980. You can buy it at dofowines.com. It's called Yodi 980 because the school mascot's the coyote. And then there's 980 vines. So Wonderly donated 980 free vines in the ground. And then from that, then we've been growing for about 5 years now. And our 2020 cab came out last July. This July, you'll see our 2021 cab. And just pointing out that the label that you see there is that was designed by a student. She's a senior this year. So last year in her junior year is when she designed that label. The one on the very, very far right that says 980 Yodi, that was the second place one. So even the second place one was pretty good from what these kids were coming up with. And then, by the way, Yodi 980 just got named one of the hottest wines of 2023 in Wine Business Monthly. That's the biggest journal for a wine business. So we're kind of excited about that. All right, go to the next one. Just mention it a little bit. District level support. So it's important that I do have a science TOSA that puts together, you can go ahead and click it, Nate. That puts together all the resources that help them create these lessons that push them into the garden. So the youth team master gardeners help us by putting them together. We put them in on the website and a Google Drive, and we kind of lump it all together. And the master gardeners, a lot of their lessons were like an hour long, and we were like, we can't do an hour. Teachers aren't going to do an hour. How would they get that to 20 minutes at a time? So they kind of helped us, and they broke it down to 20 minutes. And then they're a huge, huge asset. They even germinate the plants for us, get them to grow a little bit, and then they'll deliver them to the site so they can go from there. So huge, huge. Go ahead next. This is the flyer that kind of has all the stuff that we send out to teachers because my science TOSA loves Canva, so it's on Canva. All right, go ahead and go to the next one. So I'll just show you a couple pictures. So Kelly, the one I mentioned from May Ranch, these are her slides that she talks about how she uses them. And then she does everything through this math. She does everything through the garden. They make their own tea and they have tea tasting. So they'll invite me over to do some tea tasting, that kind of stuff. And then go one more. And that's that real world problems, which is the whole thing that we're trying to do is that portrait of a graduate at the very, very beginning. How do we make that portrait of a graduate? How do we put it in practice? And how do we have kids actually doing the stuff? So this is Kelly's, her demonstration of some of the stuff that they're doing. Everything they're weighing it before they take it to the cafeteria so they get their market value and calculating all the math on how much they owe and all that kind of stuff. So kind of turn it into that. So that is the quickest version of a multi-hour presentation. I could tell you all the individual details that go into all of that. But that's a quick overview of all of the gardens and how I put them together. And my email's on there. So I'll just tell you that every garden and every system is a little bit different. You may have to do it a little bit more, but finding a way between all of the funding sources, because like I say, between ESSER, LCAP, donations, SB 1000, all the different funding sources, there's money out there. You just got to get creative in how to find it. So, and that's all for me. Thanks, Nate.
Great. Thank you so much, Doug. Like a round of applause, snaps, emojis, appreciations in the chat are all welcome for Doug at this point. What we'd prefer to do with this webinar today is I'd like to give you just a moment to take a couple of notes about what you heard from Doug, reflect on what's in your mind about Valverde, maybe identify a couple of questions, and either add those questions to the Jamboard or put them in the chat. We're going to have some time at the end of this hour to handle a couple of those questions. And then we have extended time from 5 to 5:30 for deeper conversation. So, I think a lot of the technical how-tos and, defining ESLers and whatnot might happen best at that time. But let me be quiet for just a moment to give you a chance to gather your thoughts before we move on to our next presenter. Okay, I find the think time to be an awkward blessing in Zoom. We don't often give ourselves permission to pause and think. And then it does feel a little bit weird to have the silence on the Zoom. So hopefully that gave you a chance to gather your thoughts. Doug, there are quite a few good questions in the chat. Some of them you might be able to respond by chat, but we'll probably open it up at the end to handle some of those verbally as well. Amy, there's a request if you could put the Jamboard link in the chat again for people who might have arrived after it was first shared so that they can gather their thoughts there. Okay, so Doug represents a point of view and an approach to ensuring that every school has a garden within a district from a district office point of view. So Doug works in the district office at Val Verde Unified, and through that office made sure and took steps from an equity lens to make sure each campus in his district had access to gardens. We know that there are lots of models about how schools have gardens. Often it's for the lone teacher, secretly planting something and getting away with it for a while. Sometimes it's a community effort of neighbors supporting the school. But one other way that schools frequently access gardens is through community partner support. So there are a lot of community partner organizations that manage and support gardens. Many of you are on this call today. And we are going to take a turn to listen to the approach of the HEAL project and the work that Amy Bono has done to go from having gardens at some schools in Cabrillo Unified School District to moving to a district-wide implementation with every school having a garden. So please join me in welcoming Amy Bono from the HEAL project to the stage.
Hello, everybody. Kick back at you. Thank you. It was a very inspiring presentation Doug did, and mine will have fewer photos. So he presented sort of a top-down, like the district taking the leadership. I'm a bottom-up kind of school garden. We started as a group of parents and community members who were interested in fighting childhood obesity in 2005. So they got permission from the school principal to put a garden in the on the field of one of the elementary schools in our school district, which is the Cabrillo Unified School District. You could advance the slide, magic though. That's me, that's my contact info. So just to tell you a little bit about what we do, the HEAL project started in 2005, and you can go to the next one. They could see my face on the screen. You go back. So the Cabrillo Unified School District is in San Mateo County. So the district is nestled on the ocean side of the peninsula between San Francisco and Silicon Valley. So it's a very affluent area surrounding us, but where we are is not very populated, large swaths of land without a large population. So there's not a whole lot of tax dollars going to support the schools. So we have fewer than 3,000 students in a TK to grade 12 school district, but it's the largest geographic area for a school district in the county. And we are a historically agricultural region. The soil is really beautiful here. We have felt a lot of pressures of the growth of biotech, and .com put a lot of pressure on housing on this side of the hill. We refer to ourselves as the coast side. We refer to everything else as the other side of the hill because we are pretty isolated. It's sort of island living here in Half Moon Bay. You can move to the next one, please. So we started and oh, it's a duplicate. We can go ahead. You have all that same information. We can go to the next one. So we started in 05 at a single school, the Hatch Elementary School. Parents, community members started it with a grant from Kaiser. So it was sort of tentatively started. We got our name from the grant that funded us. At the time, it was called HEAL, Healthy Eating, Active Lifestyle. We changed it to Health, Environment, Agricultural Learning right after that. So we teach food where they come from, where it comes from and why it matters. We redesigned our mission, vision, values a couple of years ago to make sure the why it matters is included. It's not just about kids eating healthy food. It's about the connection with the environment and their choices having some power in the environment. And we had been, there's 4 elementary schools within the Cabrillo district. So for the 18 years of our history, we served 2 of those elementary schools for about the last 16 years. And then when our school superintendent, Sean McFetridge, started, who has a great environmental education history at all of his school districts, he was concerned about this being an issue of equity. The funding for our program at the school was paid for by the parents. It was the PTO funds. So every year I'd have to go, or sometimes every other year, I'd have to go in front of the PTO parents and explain to them why this was valuable to them and why they should use their hard-earned donations to support the garden program. I had been asked by other school districts, by other schools, and even other schools within this district, if we could expand our intensive garden program, which is the program that we do in the garden, to their schools. And it really was not in our interest to do that because it was so labor intensive to keep it running, to staff it. We had about 5 years into our history, so about 13 years ago, we partnered with the health department to open the San Mateo County School Farm. So we serve kids from throughout San Mateo County at the farm, where every kid gets to plant, harvest, taste food grown at the farm. They also do a give back, like a weed race or something like that. So we serve the Cabrillo students in transitional kindergarten through 1st grade at the farm for a field trip every year, as well as schools from throughout San Mateo County. And I have to give a shout out to Life Lab. I know John Fisher's on this call. Our lesson started specifically from, I forget what the name of the book is. There is this book that Life Lab published about school gardens and doing school garden. A lot of our lessons were sourced from that. We are now developing a school garden handbook for San Mateo County schools who are the growing classroom. Thank you, John. It's a great resource, even if you're not in San Mateo County. We're trying to design a garden handbook specifically to get other schools within San Mateo County to grow gardens. We don't have the infrastructure, the district buy-in. We are just trying to do outreach to individual schools and see if anyone is interested in becoming the advocate so we could help give them our tips and tricks, things we've learned over time. So we serve all 4 elementary schools within the district. Currently, there's a middle school, there's a high school, and a continuation high school. The high school has the FFA program. The middle school is trying to develop a garden program. They put a garden in, didn't really talk to anyone about it, so they put it in not really close to a water source. So things like that are tips that we all go, of course, but people who are new to gardening and new to planting gardens need to have sort of the obvious things spelled out so they could adopt them easily. I'm ready for the next slide. So I've talked about both of these, or all 3 of our main ways that reach out to the public. So the intensive garden program is the one that we do at the elementary schools. It's 26 weeks of 1 hour a week lessons for the 2nd and 3rd graders in the district. So how it works is in the winter, right after Christmas break, we get our 2nd graders in once a week. Each classroom is broken into 2 sections. So the teacher gets small group instruction in the classroom with 12 or 13 kids, and we take the other kids out for an hour, and then we swap them later in the week. So we have done a lot of work with Andrea Yogoyan is on this call. She was formerly of the San Mateo County Office of Education. She helped all of the non-formal educators work on their next generation science standards tie-in. So we made sure that we are supporting NGSS in our lessons. So we get kids for 13 weeks as second graders, and then they have summer break. At the end of summer break, they come back in the fall and they come back for another 13 weeks as third graders. After they graduate from the whole intensive garden program, then they can come and help us sell food at the, I'm pointing to it, the Coastside Farmers Market, if they want to on a Saturday, and help them to learn some soft skills about like doing math, helping to talk to the public about their favorite produce and what their favorite recipe is. And also we have an informal garden club that 4th and 5th graders who have graduated from the program can come into the garden with our educator and do less structured lessons or help do things for the San Mateo County Fair. So the four gardens have been a huge success, been very appreciated at the schools. The parents who were asking for them in other schools got what they want without having to pay for it because the district pays for it. That was life-changing for us. And just to talk about our other programs, the county farm started in 2010. Our numbers dropped down with the pandemic, but this year we're coming back to pre-pandemic numbers. We're very excited. Kids from throughout San Mateo County get to go on either the objective is a 2 touch point field trip so they could see it seasonally like we do with the kids in the garden. And then the third item here is in the community talking about our school garden handbook. If anyone's interested in learning more about it, particularly if you have a school in San Mateo County who might be interested in developing a garden, please reach out to me, or if you go to that link with the healproject.org/programs, there's a place for you to put in information where one of my staff can get back to you. I want to make sure I'm not out of time. Am I out of time? Oh, I'm 2 minutes over. Okay, thank you.
No worries. Thank you so much, Amy. Round of applause, snaps, appreciations for Amy. Again, feel free to drop a note in the chat. And similar for kind of after we wrapped up with Doug, I'd like to just give a moment for all of us to pause and reflect and think about the HEAL Project's journey, the programs available to students at all schools in Cabrillo Unified School District, and questions we might have about how that journey happened, or things you'd like to ask Amy. So let me pause and be quiet for a moment to give you a chance to think and get your questions either in the chat or on the Jamboard. Okay, great. There is so much action in the chat and so much action on the both panels of the Jamboard. Just really appreciate all of the sharing and learning that's going on here. We do have a couple of minutes to maybe handle a couple of questions in whole group. And I know there's quite a bit going on in the chat, and maybe Doug or Amy, there's something in the chat that catches your attention you'd like to respond to. But if you're a participant and you have a question you'd like to ask, please use the reaction features to raise a hand, and I'll call you into the conversation.
Well, I saw a couple, Nate, if you let me answer them that were on the Padlet. Should be
Great. Thanks, Doug.
Yeah, I see one in here. Are your shade structures district architect approved? Absolutely. It has the 4 feet and the footings go 48 inches deep. Yes, all that was DSA approved. So yeah, those all have to be. UCR Master Gardeners, a couple questions on them. All this is free. It's all 100% free. They don't charge. They are literally just people that go around and help people learn how to use gardens. So it is a fantastic group. They provide so much guidance for our teachers. So there's no stipend, there's no nothing. It's 100% free support for your teachers. I answered the Procter & Gamble one, and the regulations, DSA approvals and county permits. They don't care about gardens, so you can do whatever you want. There's no issues there. I would like to say I have a good stipend for my garden coordinator. It started out, I sent it to negotiations and they came back with a $200 stipend. And I said, well, thanks for nothing. So basically what I do is I supplement with some extra duty to make it happen and then get it up to 1,000. And I've already requested it for to go back up. Who do you talk to for the SB 1000 funds? Your economic development team. So that was one of the key partners is your city council and your economic development team know exactly who's coming in, and they're the ones that will say, we're not signing up on building permits until you go talk to, or you donate money to a park, or you do those kinds of things. So the city, for part of it, because we're part of Moreno Valley, part of Paris, and part of county, unincorporated county. So unincorporated county is better at sending people to us than the cities are. Let's see. Yeah, they're local. They're here in UCR. I think that was all the questions. I'll stop for a second. Oh, the other thing I will say is I do, and I did hear like when you're looking at a district approach that's coming on down, but I want you guys to know that this was actually a teacher who pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed. George knows the teacher, Kelly. She pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed until this turned into it looks like a top-down approach, but they're all busy right now, so I'm just doing the talk for them. It was definitely not me coming up with the idea. It was these teachers pushing me to formalize everything and make it so that every kid had access instead of just the schools that they were at. So I'll stop talking.
Great. Thanks, Doug. Maybe a question for both of you. I think everybody, as they've tried to engage in this work, has hit a hurdle at some point. A barrier in terms of resources, a barrier in terms of leadership or support, a barrier in terms of somebody who just refuses to help and gets in the way. Could you guys maybe share a story or two about a barrier you faced and how you navigated it to get this work done?
I already talked a little bit about having to deal with schools and school districts. I mean, schools and school parents directly to get the funding. And my solution was to not offer the program to other schools until the school district said they would fund it. And I have a multi-year contract with the school district. It does not cover 100% of our costs though, because I still do fundraising and do grant writing, and I want to do what it takes to make sure that the local kids, all of the local kids, have access to the same lessons.
So I'm going to say the biggest obstacle was funding. So when I went to my LCAP people and said, here's the amount of money that I need, and then we started the projects, and that's right when construction costs were going up. So when I was buying an entire pallet of redwood to build these things, it was $4,000 for a bundle. And then by the time I got around to buying them, it was $16,000 a bundle. So it had quadrupled in price. So now I'm like trying to find the money, and they're telling me, well, you can't have about an LCAP because I had to approve last June. You got to find the money. So that forced me into going and talking and finding donations and all that kind of stuff. So that cost of materials quadrupled. And from the time we put it in the budget in May until I started building in August. And that was the biggest obstacle that I had to go through.
Great. Thank you both so much. I'm going to share my screen again. I don't see anybody with a raised hand, but if somebody does have a question, doesn't know how to raise their hand, just unmute and feel free to throw that out. We are going to have some opportunities for smaller group conversations in a moment, but if you have a question for the whole group, this would be a good time to ask. Okay. All right. Hearing none, I'm going to provide closing to this portion of this session, but I do want to acknowledge just how much expertise there is on this call, and I encourage people to stick around after 5 o'clock for those serendipitous informal conversations. If you have a program and you'd like to say more about it, stick around and please share, and we'll talk about how to do that in a moment. But as we close this out, I want to do a couple things. One is gather your feedback. This is the first year that the District Innovation Hub has run a webinar series. So your feedback really helps us think about what we offer, how we offer it, helps us know more about your needs, both in terms of content, but also in terms of format. So Amy has shared in the chat a link to a feedback form. So I'm going to give you a minute to click on that link and open it and have it in your tabs and maybe answer the first couple of questions before I move on. Okay. We also have an announcement about a survey that one of our hubs is doing. And Amy, could you speak to the survey in the California Roadmap to a Green Economy and what we're trying to find out there?
Yeah, in brief, we're trying to create a roadmap for California to align its TK and community college and industry sectors so that all jobs are green jobs. But the stage that we're at right now is just to try to find out a lot more about what's going on within the state when it comes to anything related to green careers. So if you or someone you know is involved in work like that, that should be on our radar, please share that out.
Great. So there's a link in there, and Amy will likely share a link in the chat as well. And I imagine this will show up in a follow-up email just because I know how things get lost after you close out your day and close all your tabs. It's sometimes hard to find the thing you were looking for. But yes, one of CAELI's hubs is thinking about green career pathways. And this work will be really informative to the entire field. Okay, we have another announcement from one of our other CAELI innovation hubs, a community-based partner hub. I don't know if we have a member from the community-based partner hub on the call. If we do, unmute. If not, I'm going to turn over to Amy Frame to speak to it as well.
So in brief, the partner portal is a website where we are trying to connect community-based partners with educators throughout the state. And the stage that we're at right now is especially asking anyone who is a community-based partner, including many of you on this call who support schools with school garden programs and other sort of school greening initiatives, to get yourself on there and become searchable by educators in the formal sector who might want to be interested in looking for services of a certain kind in a particular area.
Great, thanks, Amy. We really believe that CAELI is becoming a trusted source of information and a really strong network of people, organizations, school districts, and through that, I think if you are able to add your organization to this portal, it's another trusted place where school districts can find you. It's searchable by geography, by topic, by grade level, and all kinds of other indicators that might be important to your program. So if you're a community-based partner, please do enroll in the partner portal, and I believe Amy will share a link if she hasn't already in the chat. This webinar is part of a series. Each of the webinars is recorded. You can find those through CAELI. We had a first session talking about the journey to become a Green Ribbon School District. So we had Rialto and their kind of national Green Ribbon journey. And we also had George Garcia from California Department of Education sharing information about the California Green Ribbon program. If that's something interesting to your district, there's a great webinar from Rialto recorded for that. Our last session in February talked about leadership and how to think about whole systems leadership, led by Tim Baird. Fantastic webinar. Tim is just a welcoming resource. So I encourage you, if you're interested in trying to think about how to approach leadership and leadership organization, it's a great resource there. And Tim seems to be pretty boundless in his ability to answer follow-up questions. So not to put you on the spot, Tim, because I know you're trying to retire, but I don't think it's going to happen. Next month, our webinar will be Taking Equity to Scale, thinking about outdoor learning, climate change, and especially how do you do equity in California's largest school system. If you don't know, you should know. Los Angeles Unified School District has been doing some amazing things, building outdoor learning schools, building programs on campuses, greening their schoolyards, tackling climate through all of their district operations. And so we'll get a peek into all of those efforts in a district that serves about 10% of California's students. So an incredible equity journey to learn about next month, coinciding neatly with Earth Day as well. All right, so it is 5 o'clock. That does kind of end the formal presentation part of this. But what we'd like to invite people to do is to stick around and maybe join a breakout room. We've got a couple of breakout room ideas already. One is, I think we're going to put Doug and